All right, prophecy update this week. I thought we would do a study on the seventh year Sabbath, but something else kind of came up and caught my attention, so I thought I would do a special study titled DEI WOKISM versus Christianity. I'm sure most of you have heard about DEI by now, but we have, this DEI movement is invading almost every aspect of our society. And of course, you know that DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sounds like very nice words, but how they are defined and applied are not so nice. They're not so nice. These words have been twisted with linguistic, tactical, twisted with tactical linguistic trickery and made into a weapon to remove white people from any position of power and to destroy biblical Christianity. It's racist, anti-family, and anti-Christian at its core. If you were born white, you were born privileged, and that privilege should be taken away and given to others. It says that if you are a Christian who believes there is only one God, that Jesus is the only way to heaven, and that certain lifestyles are sinful, your religion is hateful because it isn't diverse, equitable, or inclusive enough. DEI, therefore, is something we cannot affirm. We could never affirm anything like this. It is the unholy trinity and the doctrinal foundation of the new state religion called WOKISM. And its roots go back a long way. This ancient religion, because that's what it is, began with the serpent in the Garden of Eden when he tricked Eve into eating the fruit from the forbidden tree, promising her that she wouldn't die, but that her eyes would be opened and that she would be woke like the gods. So, we need to understand that any church, business, school, or youth sports program that adopts or affirms DEI literally becomes part of the church of Satan, evangelizing and making disciples for him. Many people have heard of re-education camps in communist countries and things like that. It's already here, my friends. And it's not just communism. It's literally doctrines from hell that are being espoused in every aspect of our society. An amazing feat this is. I mean, who would have ever thought that businesses, schools, and even youth sports programs could be hijacked and transformed almost overnight into something like this and not have hardly anybody realizing it. Well, I mean, a lot more people are waking up now, but when it first came out, a lot of people had no idea what was happening. And that brings us to this question: how did we allow this to happen? I can tell you it's because most people don't examine anything critical anymore. They just go with the flow, following what everybody else does. Well, today we're going to examine DEI word for word and see what the Bible has to say about it. So let's get into it. We're going to start off as soon as my slide cooperates. Thought it was working good, and now it's not working good. Now I can't even get it to move. Oh, there we go. All right, diversity. Diversity by definition simply means different things. It doesn't sound bad. Nobody would look at that word and say, hey, that's an evil word. I'll go on further about this word. Not only does diversity not seem offensive, it's actually something that appeals to our senses. Why? Well, when we look at creation, God created all of these different kinds of things. There's lots of diversity, if you would, in creation. And so, it must be a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But to the woke, and if you study their videos, listen to their, read their books, dig into this deeper, to the woke, diverse is anything that is non-normative. That's one of their terms that they use, normative. And normative to them means that which is white, Christian, masculine, heterosexual, or cisgender. Okay? So that's what when they use the word normative there, it includes all of those things. So to be diverse means to not be those things. In fact, it doesn't include those things, right? They're not, DEI isn't out there trying to protect biblical Christianity. They're not trying to say that biblical Christianity is even one of the different acceptable ways of living. It labels biblical Christianity as the enemy of DEI. Okay? You're not included if you're somebody with a biblical worldview about, marriage, sex, race, sin, and all those types of things. You're not accepted. You're marginalized. You're not part of the oppressed group, if you would. So to them, anything that is considered diverse or anything that is considered non-normative is inherently good. In other words, if you were born as a minority, or if you were born as or you think you were born as something different, as non-heterosexual, if you're anything other than a white Christian, or just a Christian who is heterosexual and believes in family and marriage and all that, if you're anything other than that, you are automatically something that is good, something that is holy, and something that is to be revered. Rather than what the gospel tells us is that we were all born into sin and we need a savior. They're not looking for any savior. They're looking for us to for us to demand that sin be accepted as normal and not only equal, but actually holy. In other words, you could even say this: in order to be holy, according to DEI, in order to be holy, you must first be unholy. Okay? Think about that. In order to be holy, you must first be unholy. And so one of the questions we must ask ourselves when we're talking about diversity, well, what does that mean, okay, to us? Well, we know what it means to them. It means everything that is non-biblical, non-Christian, non-white. That's diversity to them. But where do you draw boundary lines? What kind of is there any kind of diversity that is not good? I mean, we can't just say diversity. Anything that is diverse is good, right? Because you don't want to include rapists, murderers, and thugs in your group or your business and say, well, we're trying to be diverse. We have to have a certain representation of murderers, thieves, rapists, drug abusers, all those kinds of people. You don't say that, right? Well, the tricky thing about the word diversity is they don't allow us to define what diversity is acceptable and what's unacceptable. They tell us what it is, and you can see it throughout all of their programs, their doctrines, their books, whatever. So let's get into this from a biblical perspective. If I wait too long, then it's really hard. Oh, okay. Let's turn to 1 Corinthians 12, verse 5. Now, Satan is a wordsmith. What does that mean? Well, he's somebody who is an expert at taking words and spinning them and giving them a different meaning, pulling them out of context, and so forth, right? And so that's what he's done with this word diversity. We look at this word diversity now, just like not we, but the world does. They look at the word diversity, much like they do the rainbow, right? It's by nature, the word diversity, or I could say even the rainbow with its diverse colors, is appealing to us by nature because it actually comes from the Bible. It actually comes from creation. So it's not the word that's bad, it's how it's being used. Now in the Bible, it talks about diversity not only of created orders, created things, but also of gifts that are given to Christians. And so I'm going to start reading a little bit from 1 Corinthians 12, and we'll start out in verse 5. And it reads, "And there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord." Okay? Differences of administrations, but the same Lord. Verse 6, "And there are diversities," there it is, "diversities of operations, but it is the same God which worketh all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. For to one is given by the Spirit the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another the gifts of healing by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another diverse kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues or languages. But all these worketh that one and the selfsame Spirit, dividing to every man severally as he will. For as the body is one and hath many members," your body has arms, legs, and all that, right? You don't have 10 legs. "And all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles," okay? "Whether you be an Israelite or a non-Israelite. Whether we be bond or free," whether you're bond means a bondservant or a slave or a free person, "and have been all made to drink into one Spirit." So notice here the biblical definition of diversity, in this case, diversities of gifts, diversities of nations, are all okay as long as you're being led by one Spirit, okay? Not by many different spirits, not by many different gods, one God, one Spirit, joined together in something like this is acceptable diversity, okay? Nobody would argue with that. It's good. It actually brings, we don't want everybody to look like, act like we are. Because if we were all like that, we probably wouldn't get along with each other if we were all the same. And there wouldn't be people to do other necessary parts because there wouldn't be people that were skilled at doing things that we're not skilled at. So it's a good thing. And the diversity DEI agenda plays on this truth, okay? But they twist it into something they twist something that is holy into something that is unholy, very subtly. All right. For the body is not one member, but many. All right. For the body is not one member, but many. Okay. So we see that diversities of gifts, diversity of people, kinds of people from different races being a part of the Christian brotherhood. There's no problem with that. And we skip on over to Revelation 7 verse 4. And this, I'll just start reading and then we'll tie this in here. "And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel." Okay, there was a shout out saying, "Hey, stop, don't let the end come, don't let the wrath of God come until we seal the servants of our God in their foreheads." And then there were sealed 12,000 from each of the tribes of Israel. And then in verse 9, it says this, "After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues." There's a lot of diversity there, right? A lot of diversity. "Stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands." Okay? So it's not just Israelites that are servants of Christ. It's people of all nations, kindreds, tongues, and nations. It's a very diverse group, right? So there's nothing wrong with this. That's why this plays, that's why Satan can use diversity in such an effective way, because it's a very positive thing when applied correctly. Now, let me see if I could go another verse and then we'll talk more about this, or if that's the end of this. Okay, that was the end of that. We'll soon be jumping over to Revelation 21. Actually, we'll read through Revelation 21 first, and then we'll go back to, or then I'll make another point here. Revelation 21, verse 23. And the city had no need of the sun. We're looking forward to New Jerusalem, heavenly Jerusalem, coming upon earth. What is the perfect state of things? What does perfection look like? And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon, to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. And here's what I came here for, and the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it. And the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. What does this tell us here? There's great diversity here, right? There are different nations, even in the eternity, that are separate from the nation of Israel. In fact, the nation of Israel is separated into 12 distinct tribes. That's diversity, right? Now, here's the problem. What we're being told today is that if you have a church in, way out in rural Idaho, and all there is mainly white people there, and somebody from DEI would go in there and look at that church and say, man, way too many white faces around here. We have to be diverse. We have to figure out a way. First of all, you guys should be ashamed of yourselves for not being diverse and inclusive enough. Next of all, we got to figure out a program to get non-white faces in this building here. And we got to figure out how to do this, because if we don't do it, this is unholy. Okay? So you're guilting this group of people that just naturally live in this location because their fathers lived there, their forefathers or whatever, or as a community that they liked, they just wanted to be in that kind of a community. Now you're telling them that that's sinful and wrong. Okay? Now, when you look at the biblical diversity, most of this diversity is separate groups of people in kind of gathered together in their groups, right? Even the 12 tribes spread throughout all the world. Yes, it's diverse, but it doesn't mean that each and every nation, if you would, has to be like China. Okay. I don't go over to China and say, hey, China, man, there's not enough white faces around here. We need to make sure that every other person in your country is white. No, they would look at you like you're absolutely insane. I wouldn't go over to the Middle East and say that. I'd get my head cut off, right? Not enough white Christians here. Looks like you're not diverse enough. And so that kind of diversity doesn't make any sense. It's not, when you're reading biblical diversity here, it's not saying that your local church has to have a person of every single color in that church in order to be acceptable and right. Okay. If it does, if you live in a neighborhood that's already like that, nobody's judging you. Nobody's saying that that's wrong, but don't come and try to change somebody else's community, somebody else's church, because you don't think it's diverse enough. There is no biblical permission to do that. And by nature, it's not even like that. Look, when you look out at, diversity in nature, God made chickens. He made birds. He made sheep. He made all these different kinds of animals. And I'm not going to tell a chicken to go, I'm not going to put a lion in my chicken pen in the name of diversity and say, look, we got to have diversity here. It's already diverse in the natural order that God has created it. Lions will find their domain. The birds will find their domain. They find they find their flocks. They gather together. In fact, Jesus even talks about how he has sheep of different pastures. Okay. He has diverse sheep around the world, separate from the Israelites. And so, what Satan really is trying to do, we know that being around people of like mind, like faith, like culture, like heritage actually brings unity. And so what Satan really is trying to do with DEI is he's trying to divide and conquer. He knows that with people have all these differences and you try to throw them together, he knows he can sit back and go, look at this, they're going to tear each other up. Those people are going to be envious against these people. Those people are going to hate those people. Those people aren't going to really get along with those people because they don't really understand them. They do things differently. Their food is different. And one person wants a hamburger and the other person wants to eat, I don't want to make this sound bad, but some other culture is going to eat a dog. Okay. I mean, I'm taking the extreme, right? There's no reason to force people into uncomfortable positions. If you want to live in a neighborhood that's predominantly black because you like being around your black brethren, and there's a whole bunch of black Christians that live there or whatever, and it's a nice, safe neighborhood, you should be able to do that without me coming to you and saying, hey, too many black faces around here. We got to get some white guys here because this just doesn't look diverse enough. There's no reason to force anybody out of their comfort zones. People, think about this. How many people are really comfortable around their own family? I know some kids that won't even talk out in public, but you get them among their family and they'll talk nonstop, right? And many of us know people like that. Why is that? Because there's a comfort level with being around people that are closely related to you. And it's a natural bond, a natural feeling. And it's God-given. It's God-given. But that doesn't mean now that let's just take this on a family level, that my family would look at another family that lives over here and says, we don't like you because you're different than us. No, it'd be, if they're Christians or whatever, you'd say, well, that family's different. They do things differently, but they're still, we still treat each other with kindness, love, and respect, although they're a little different. They do things a little differently. They eat different foods. They have different hobbies. They play different sports. They whatever. They tend to gravitate towards those things that are part of their culture and their family's inheritance. So in the eternity, what we see here are many different nations walking in the light of Jesus, but they're all different. They're not all the same. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody's up here saying that only Chinese people are getting to heaven, okay? Or only white people are going to heaven, or only black people go to heaven. They're all there, but in God's natural order of his kingdom, how he wants it. It's Israel living in New Jerusalem, the kings of the earth living in the light of it, and they even come at certain periods or festivals to celebrate with God's people. They actually have moments of fellowship. Though they don't live next door to them in the eternity. There's still a fellowship and a bond there. All right, so Revelation 21 verse 25 says this, and the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, New Jerusalem, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring, who's they? The kings of the nations. Notice it says nations. There's not one, when we get to heaven, there's not one nation that's just everybody blended together. Why would that be? Because that wouldn't be diverse, would it? That wouldn't be biblical diversity. That would be saying God's diversity is wrong. We shouldn't have different nations. We don't like that. We all need to be the same. Think about that. This movement is in direct opposition to true diversity, to biblical diversity. Verse 26, and they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. Glory and honor of the nations. Check that out. Glory. There's a glory of God's creation, his natural order. Verse 27, and there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defileth, neither whatsoever worketh abomination or maketh a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life. I don't think that's very inclusive enough. We got to include abominations and different lifestyles. Otherwise, this isn't quite the place I want to be. I don't know what place you want to live in, but the kind of place that DEI, the kind of heaven that DEI is trying to create, is what the Bible tells us. Looks more like what the Bible tells us to be, hell, right? A place of torment, a place of sorrow, a place of discontent, and so forth. All right. So moving on, Ezekiel 36. We're continuing to look at what biblical diversity is versus DEI, or this unholy Trinity's definition of diversity. Ezekiel 36, verse 22. Therefore say unto the house of Israel, thus saith the Lord God, I do not this for your sakes, O house of Israel, but for mine holy name's sake, which you have profaned among the heathen, whither you went. My goodness, we are profaning. Christians have allowed God's name to be profaned very heavily, especially since the 1960s in America. Because why? We do not stand up for what is right, for what is just. We let the enemy define our terms for us. We let the enemy say that which is good is now evil, and that which is good, that which is evil is good. We allow that to happen. We allow God's name to be profaned rather than having the courage to stand up and say, that's a lie. That's not what diversity is. That's not what equity really is. And that's not what being inclusive is. You're trying to peddle some kind of satanic bullcrap. All right? But we don't do that. All right? Now people would think because they're so brainwashed today, they would think you're nuts for even saying something could be satanic bullcrap. Okay? I wanted to say the other word, but there's children in here. Ezekiel 36, verse 23, and I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathen, which you have profaned in the midst of them. And the heathen shall know that I am the Lord. How do people profane things that are of God? Well, take, for instance, the rainbow. The rainbow was a covenant, the sign of the covenant that God made with Noah, that he would not flood the earth, destroy the earth with a flood again. And we take that beautiful rainbow and we allow some satanic, deranged sex cult called LGBTQ to use it as their symbol. And we just say, hey, go ahead, use it. Now we hate the symbol. We look at it with disdain and disgust because it's become a symbol of something that is grotesque, abominable, when it should be something that is holy and righteous. All right? Because it was a sign from God. Which you have profaned in the midst of them, and the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, saith the Lord God, when I shall be sanctified in you before their eyes. Verse 24. For I will take you, this is what we came here for specifically. For I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and will bring you into what? Your own land. Your own land. Well, we certainly can't. I mean, everybody else can have that these days, right? China can have their own land. People in the Middle East can have their own land. India can have their own land. But if America wants to keep their culture and their heritage mostly the same, you're classified as a racist, a bigot, and something that is unholy by the world. Okay? Think about that. But God here just said the Israelites, and by the way, The Israelites of the Bible were lost to the world and to themselves. The book of Hosea, as the book of Hosea told us they would be. And they later, after the Assyrian captivity, migrated north through the Caucasus Mountains, were later called Caucasians, then spread throughout Europe, and then later came to America. And wherever those people went, the gospel followed them. The gospel followed them. In fact, they have been the most avid proponents of the gospel since Jesus Christ came. Okay? So there's no mystery as to who the Israelites are, and there's no mystery as to why DEI focuses its hatred against, its non-inclusive, non-diverse, non-equitable treatment towards white people. It's not because we're white. It's not because of the color of our skin. It's because of the inheritance that God has given us. It's the inheritance of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Satan knows that. Though the people of the world don't know it, they just think white Christians are bad. We're really the Israelites of the Bible. And this war has been going on since Genesis chapter 3 with the serpent in the garden. There'd be a war between the woman's seed and the serpent's seed. And that's why we are not acceptable. We are not considered to be part of diversity. In fact, we are to be excluded from any kind of diversity when it comes to the DEI movement. But God says, I will bring you into your own land. There's a time coming, the millennial era, where the Israelites will live with predominantly Israelites. There will be some strangers, some sojourners traveling among the people, but the culture, the people will be predominantly made up of themselves, while other peoples will have inheritances in other nations around the world. This beautiful, diverse world, not forced intermixture of all peoples into one so you can't even tell the difference anymore. What is that? Does anybody know what that is? In the Bible, it's called Babylon. Mystery Babylon. Babylon means to mix together, to blend together into a great, what people started calling America, the great melting pot. Okay, the great melting pot. Now, that's not biblical diversity. Biblical diversity is something totally different than forced intermixture. And think about this. By saying you have every community, every business, every organization has to be completely diverse as far as different colors. I mean, to say that, to say that it has to be like that, I lost my train of thought, as you guys could tell. That was a good point, but I lost it. Maybe I'll come back to it. All right. We'll just leave it at that. All right. Here we go. Verse 25. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you. I almost feel like I was the old man on the debate. Joe Biden just there. I started talking, and I just totally lost my train of thought. All right. Continuing on. I think the point I was trying to make is in the name of diversity, it's actually anti-diversity because you're trying to make everybody the same rather than acknowledging and appreciating our God-given differences. Okay, that was the main point that I was trying to make. Somebody must have been praying for me. Give him his memory back. Don't let him be like Joe Biden, please. Ezekiel 36, verse 26, a new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you an heart of flesh. What does a stony heart mean? Somebody that's obstinate, stubborn, rebellious, not wanting to follow God. God says, I'm going to take that stony heart out of you, and I'm going to give you a heart of flesh, means soft, obedient, willing to listen, those kinds of things, right? All right. Verse 27. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. And you shall dwell. In fact, that verse I was reading there is actually prophetic of the new covenant that Jesus Christ brought. All right. Still very much having to do with the law of God. Verse 28, and you shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers. This is very important. We're going to tie this in with equity here in a minute. God says, I will cause you to dwell in a land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. Okay, equitable. Moving on to the second letter. Notice it's kind of funny. You know, you could have rearranged this. I could have went to inclusive next. I could have went diversity, inclusive, equity, but that would spell the word die. And I don't think, the people behind this movement would want us to know that their objectives really are aimed towards the goal of eliminating biblical Christianity from the earth. They want to kill or exterminate biblical Christianity, along with the proponents of it, that being true Israelites, okay? That being the people, and we'll read it at the end, I'll give it away a little bit. The dragon comes, when he comes here, Satan comes here after he's kicked out of heaven, he comes after what? The remnant of the woman's seed, that line, that family line, who keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ, okay? But anyways, we'll get to that in a little bit. Equitable. When we look at the word equitable, nobody objects to this, right? Equitable, yeah, be equitable, be fair, be balanced out with people. Yeah, let's do that. The problem is, to the woke, this means that anything you have, I have the right to have. To them, that's what equitable means. If you've worked all of your life and you've obtained wealth and maybe some kind of power in your community or power politically, or you have a business that exercises influence and authority over a certain area. If you have all those, to the woke, what you have, I deserve, because what you have was gained by some kind of privilege that you had that I didn't. Okay. What do they call that today? White privilege. They say that since we were born white, that we were born with all of these special privileges that non-white people have. Okay? Therefore, we need to figure out a way to make this equitable. We need to figure out a way to take the privilege away from you white people here and give special privileges to those who are non-white. All right? Whether you earned it or not, it doesn't matter to them. Okay? So does that sound equitable to any of us here? No, it sounds like envy. It sounds like jealousy. It sounds like lust. It sounds like a lot of bad things to me. So it isn't, again, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The words themselves are not bad. It is how those words have been defined and applied by this group of people, by the woke religion, that makes them very, very deceptive and very, very wicked. All right. So if let's say those of us that were born in America, right? Many of our parents could have been here ever since the Mayflower. I know I have some that go all the way back to the Mayflower. One family line goes right back to the Mayflower. You think about all of the sacrifices that our forefathers went through. The Mayflower itself, I believe, wasn't it over half of the people died? I can't remember now. I should know that. It escapes my mind. The blood, sacrifice, and tears that our forefathers had to go through to give us what many people call privilege. It's called inheritance. It's called passing a blessing down to your progeny. The world calls those blessings, DEI calls those blessings, evil privileges. Think about that. And And so somebody could just move over here from a different country. Let's say from Somalia, or it doesn't matter where it is, okay? Move over here tomorrow, come here, and then tell one of us around here that our ancestors, our ancestors may have been here since the beginning, and tell us that we have privileges that we don't deserve, and we have privileges that are racist and unfair and unequitable, and therefore we need to take the back seat while they take the front seat and take the driving wheel from us. Think about that. How ridiculous is this movement? How unholy, how wicked, how demonic is this movement? And yet people just let it roll over them. In their businesses, in our public schools. Many states are fighting back against this, by the way. 30 states have now introduced anti-DEI legislations. Texas just passed a law, an anti-DEI law. So many people are catching on. Supreme Court has made rulings against DEI by overturning affirmative action and has opened up a lot of lawsuits against DEI nationwide. So there are some good things that are happening, but it's taking us a long time to catch on to what this is. All right. All right. So equity. Let's learn a little bit about how this equity opposes biblical truth. Okay. Genesis 26 verse 23. God says to Abraham, "Sojourn in the land, and I will be with thee. I will bless thee, for unto thee and unto thy seed," that's your offspring, your progeny, your family line, "I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father." Now, do you think the Canaanites were too happy about this about this prophetic statement God gave towards and promise, covenant that God gave to Abraham? Do you think that the satanic Canaanites who practiced child sacrifice, their gods were all part of the LGBTQ plus group? If you guys know that, actually. We did a study on it recently where most of the pagan gods in history were lesbians. They were homosexuals, transgender, you name it. All the whole pantheon of pagan gods, most of them had some sort of sexual deviancy attached to them. Okay? So this isn't anything new. LGBTQ is paganism repackaged as something new when it's always been here. Okay? Okay, so they wouldn't be too happy about this. That neither is the world happy about the inheritance that God has given to his people and to believers. Verse 4, "And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and I will give unto thy seed all these countries. In thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed." I'll tell you this DEI movement, these people espousing this stuff, well, I say, a lot of people espouse a lot of things in America that they wouldn't be able to espouse, although maybe it wouldn't be accurate to say they wouldn't be able to espouse this because this is what Satan's kingdom's about. But you think about all the people that have a lot of different freedoms to say and do different things. They have those freedoms because of the Christian nations of the world, okay? Otherwise, many of them would be, you just look at non-Christian nations, they're usually some kind of a dictatorship, forcing them to do what they're supposed to do, so on and so forth. But let's go back to the point here. God promised to this specific family that he would give them a bunch of different countries as their inheritance, and that all the nations of the earth would be blessed because of them. The fact is, whenever Christianity is allowed to flourish, people are blessed by it. Even non-believers are blessed by Christians. When you take Christianity out of the equation, everybody gets cursed. everybody suffers. Okay? When you take Israel, the true Israelites, out of the world, it's the same effect, because they're the ones carrying forth the truth of the Bible, the truth of the gospel, and the inheritance that has been passed on to them. Verse 5, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. All right. So Abraham's family. Now think about this. Again, the Canaanites despised Abraham and his family. Okay. The world despises any family or nation or people that is of God, that's bringing blessings to the world, because Satan doesn't want other people to experience blessings. He wants them to be tormented by his demonic spirits, okay? Which this DEI, make no mistake about it, opens the gate up for all of those demonic spirits. Deuteronomy 7 verse 6 says this, for thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Okay? So if God has chosen a people to be holy and to... Now what DEI says is, hey, wait a minute, God, this is not diverse enough. It's not equitable. It's not fair that you would choose one people to have these special privileges passed on to them by Abraham, their father. And it's not inclusive enough. And it's not inclusive enough. Think about that. All right. Proverbs 13, verse 22. We have what we have in America that many people call white privilege. We have what we have because our forefathers thought about future generations. It was always a biblical thing. Think about all the Bible characters in the Bible, the historical biblical characters of the Bible. The one thing that they looked forward to the most was their descendants becoming numerous, their descendants being blessed, their descendants having a land, their descendants having an inheritance. They cared about those things. It meant something to them. But DEI now says that inheritance passed on to people from generation to generation, whether it be your religious faith, whether it be your reputation, your name, political power. They say that's systemic racism. Systemic racism, okay? But Proverbs 13, verse 22 says this, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children, and the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just. In other words, it is biblically true. The biblical truth is this. A good man would leave privileges to his children's children. Privileges meaning, hey, I'll give you my land. I'm going to pass this land on. So now you're born with not having to go find land. You have land, okay? Those kinds of things, or wealth. That is a good man would do that. DEI says that's evil. That's white privilege, okay? A good man would die and sacrifice his life for a country that his children could live free in. DEI says none of that matters. I can come over from a third world country and you must be equitable enough to give me everything you have. Okay? And this proverb also says that the wealth of sinners actually belongs to the righteous. So what they're trying to do is take wealth, prestige, and power. DEI wants to take wealth, prestige, and power and take that from the righteous and give it to the unrighteous. Okay? By that I mean when you're talking about the portion of the DEI that focuses on sexual deviancy and stuff like that. Okay. Now, carrying on. Continuing on. If I can get it to flip over here. Okay, Deuteronomy 28, verse 1. I think these will be, we're getting close to winding this down here. Check this out concerning Israel. And again, many people would have a hard time even understanding what I'm focusing on here if they didn't understand that America makes up the modern day nation of Israel. We're not looking over at the small remnant of the Jews over in the land of Palestine that's called the Israeli nation. In order to truly understand what's going on, you really must understand that, because it makes all of this come into perspective. You understand why the things are happening the way they are. Deuteronomy 28 verse 1 says this, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth." Listen, think about this. America became powerful. America became great because America was predominantly Christian, okay? Was predominantly Christian. We had the 10 Commandments in our schools. We had, Christianity was baked into almost every major institution around, from the national level down to the local level. That's why we became great. That's why we became high above all nations of the earth. And what DEI says is that is evil and we must stop that. Okay? Because obviously Satan doesn't want the kingdom of God to flourish. He wants his kingdom to flourish. Verse 2, "And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses and in all that thou settest thine hand unto, and he shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God hath given thee. The Lord shall establish thee an holy people unto himself, as he has sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God and shall walk in his ways." Now, the world establishes an holy people unto themselves. I'm telling you, just come out tomorrow and tell everybody you're coming out of the closet. You will be celebrated. You are holy to everybody. You are now revered. Because now what is good is evil, and what is evil is now good. Verse 10, "And all the people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of thee." They shall stand in awe of thee because of what God has done for you. We had that. Okay, we had that in America, and we forfeited in large part our inheritance because we're deceived by nice sounding words. Okay, we're deceived by things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. We say, we just want to be nice to everybody, but we don't want to take the time to understand what any of this means. Okay? Because that's too much work. It's too much work to say, hey, what do they mean by diversity? Okay, yeah, I know what their statement says, but what do these people mean? And how have they been applying this in our businesses, in our schools, and in our workplace? Okay? Don't just give me some blanket statement that looks good and sounds good, because you know why? In many of these statements, these DEI statements, somebody would look at them and say, well, Pastor Ben, why would you argue with that? It sounds like it's something you would believe in. Okay? Because I would say, yeah, it sounds like that, but that's not what this whole movement is about. You have to put it in context of what it's associated with and what they're doing. And I know after studying this stuff and knowing that Satan's a wordsmith, he's the great deceiver. I know that they are being intentionally vague with the official statements so they can suck people in to deceive them. Okay? You can't draw people in by telling them all of the evil that you're trying to do to them. You're going to make it look good. You're going to make it look like a sweet piece of candy. And then they eat it and they realize they've been poisoned. Okay? All right. I do have several more verses to go, so I better speed this up. Just remember, I don't think we've covered the last letter yet. All right. And the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, and in the fruit of thy cattle, and the fruit of thy ground, in the land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers to give thee. Man, we don't want any fathers around anymore. DEI doesn't like masculinity. That's not diverse enough. That's too normative. The Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven to give the rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of thine hand, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail. You're different. You're not the same. God says to Israel, I don't want you to be like the other nations. I want you to be in charge of the other nations. And thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. DEI puts us way beneath, my friends. If that thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day to observe and to do them. All right. Inclusive. All right. Inclusive to the DEI proponents doesn't mean, hey, let's just include all the different faiths, all the different beliefs, because remember, their enemy is the people that are considered normative. Okay, those are the people they want to disclude. They want to change the order, the old order into a new order. Okay, so inclusive means marginalizing Christians. Okay, and celebrating those that practice sexual sin. Matthew 28, verse 18, and Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Now, this statement here, the Great Commission, you could say, and this is why inclusive sounds good to us. The gospel is for everybody. It's for all nations. It's not just for Israel, okay? So when we hear that word inclusive, and if you don't investigate, if you don't seek out a matter, you're not going to have a problem with the word, because by nature, our mission is to include everybody in the gospel of Jesus Christ. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen. Skipping over to Revelation 22, verse 14. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. For without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters, and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. New Jerusalem, though it is inclusive of all races of people who believe, races, nations, tongues, all people who believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, it is very non-inclusive of sinners who practice lifestyles that are considered habitual sin. Okay, dogs was another name for male prostitutes or people who practice sodomy because of how dogs do that. Sorcerers, we know what that is. Whoremongers, that's all different kinds of sexual, unlawful sex. And you know the rest, okay? The alphabet community, in other words, the alphabet community, if that's what you want to call it, is not included in New Heavenly Jerusalem. And so do you think they have a problem with that? Do you think that They know that deep down inside. And do you think that's why they oppose biblical Christianity? Of course it is. That's why, in the end, there's two ways. There's two ways. There really isn't any neutral ground. Furthermore, should Christians be inclusive of everybody, no matter their behavior? Okay, we should accept anybody who's willing to repent, right, and try to change their life. But there are instances like this in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 9, where Paul says, "I wrote unto you in an epistle not to keep company with fornicators. Yet not altogether with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or with idolaters, for then you must needs go out of the world." Okay? Now check this out. There are at times that because we're in the world, we will keep company with fornicators, people that are covetous, extortioners, or idolaters, because if we didn't, we'd have to completely remove ourselves from the world. Okay? So there are instances where you would, figure out a way to get along with those people as long as they're not forcing their beliefs upon you. Does that make sense? Verse 11, "But now I have written unto you not to keep company, if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, or covetous, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, with such one know not to eat." In other words, somebody who claims to be a Christian. So we want to be around sinners so that we can spread the gospel, okay? You work with a bunch of sinners, I'm sure. I mean, we're all sinners, right? But you work with unrepentant sinners. Your families may play sports with unrepentant sinners, their parents and the kids. That's okay, because we're there to be an influence in the world rather to be influenced from the world. But if you have somebody in your church that is one of these things and doesn't repent and keeps doing these things, you are permitted to be non-inclusive of them. To say, "Sorry, buddy, you come here to church and you're drunk every day, babbling. We don't need you here. Shape up before you come back." Okay? And so there are boundaries, right? There are boundaries on what you would include and what you would not. And in this generation, it's a little bit harder because of the condition or the state of the world and what we're living in. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? Do not ye judge them that are without? But them that are without, God judgeth. Those that are really technically spiritually outside of New Jerusalem, God judges them. Therefore, put away from you yourselves that wicked person. All right. Now in conclusion. What is this all about? It's really quite simple if you have a biblical worldview and you understand the migrations, the destiny, and the prophecies concerning true Israel. Revelation 12 verse 7 says this, "And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent from the Garden of Eden, called the devil and Satan." So we know who that serpent was. It wasn't a snake. It was another name for Satan. "Which what? Deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman." What does he do? The first thing Satan does when he gets to the earth is he pursues the woman, which brought forth the man-child, Jesus Christ, that family the family which Christ came through. "And to the woman were given two wings of a great eagle." This is very fascinating, my friends. there were sermons. I've got sermons back here in my library that were preached by the early Americans as they came to this land. And they read this verse and they considered this wilderness land to be the place spoken of, this land that we live here now, to be the place spoken of here in this verse. In other words, the two wings of the great eagle, the symbol of America, and this nation that was carved out by Christians in this wilderness land as they came here to escape religious persecution. And to the woman were given two wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and a times and a half a time from the face of the serpent. She was protected from the serpent for a time, times and a half a time. I would say now it seems that protection is taken away, and the floods of the serpent's lies are coming after us full stream. Verse 15, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. What is that flood? It's a flood of lies. It's a flood of deception, of which DEI is a major part of. Those lies that are designed to totally get you to totally oppose everything that is biblical and to embrace everything that is non-biblical. Verse 16, and the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. I mean, look at this. Satan is attacking the true biblical Israelites. That's who he goes after. We're already seeing it, my friends. DEI is that attack. Am I saying that Satan is here right now with his fallen angels? Not necessarily for the allotted time that he'll be given, but he's definitely got his henchmen out here preparing the way. Which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. It's an attack upon God's people, and it's an attack upon biblical Christianity. That's what this movement is all about. And like I said in the beginning, it is the trinity of, it is the unholy trinity and the foundational doctrine of the kingdom of the Antichrist as he goes forth conquering and to conquer. We'll be right back with questions and comments. Be sure to join us live every Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. for prophecy updates, and Sunday mornings, 10:30 a.m. for our line-by-line Bible studies. If you live near Princeton, Minnesota, and would like to join us in person for our Sunday morning church services, please email me at ben@christianovercomers.com for details and directions. Also, be sure to visit our website at christianovercomers.com to sign up for our weekly email updates, find our latest prophecy updates on video or podcast, catch up with our line-by-line studies, also available on video or audio podcast. And we even archive all of our studies by date. So if you have a phone or a tablet, bookmark this page so you can play our studies on the go while you're driving, going for a run, or doing chores. Now to our questions and comments. All right, welcome back. We will take questions and comments. Do we have any here?
Yeah, comment about, and the DEI is the kind of demonic trinity of, Satan's grasp on our culture and all that, which I totally agree with. But I think there's also a trinity of three-letter demonic guidelines, because there's the DEI. There's CRT, which is what turns our nation into a racist nation, and we were born racist, and everybody that formed this country wasn't racist, therefore it should all be wiped out and redone.
Right, critical race theory, right? CRT.
Yep. And then the ESG, which is when you're doing business now in this world, it hasn't gotten to the point yet where people know a lot about it, but if you're in the business world, you definitely know about it. If you want to be able to get financing or government help or whatever. If you just want to be able to exist in the business world now, in the world, you have to follow the guidelines of ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. And I'm not going to break down what each one of those are, but you already can figure out that it has to do with being woke,
Right.
and inclusive and equitable, and it's all the same thing, all three of those. But it just came to me that those are the three big ones: DEI, ESG, and CRT.
Right. Wow.
And so they've got it, or Satan has it figured out. He's pretty smart and wicked, and everybody's falling into this. Because when I was kind of looking it up, a lot of the stuff I was reading was really positive about it. Like, oh, this is the new guidelines to make sure everybody's businesses are doing wonderful and great and being fair and inclusive, and it was looked at as such a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not, because you can, if you look into it, you'll realize right away that it's just more of a Satan's grasp on our culture and our
Yeah.
Yeah, you get a score. Yeah, and if you're not a woke business, if you're a Christian business, you're gonna have a very low ESG score. Therefore, you're not gonna be able to get financing or loans, or business loans, or you won't be able to function ultimately. And like I said, it's still early, I think, in the process, but
Right.
it's gaining momentum fast. So that was my thought on that. We got anyone? See here, Philip said, I read about that in Babylon B. Business was required to be adequately queer.
Oh.
Yeah, well, Babylon B is hilarious. I love that. And then Corrine says, today's topic was so fitting for what's happening with my family. Thank you and God bless.
Yeah. God bless you. Yeah. It really is amazing to me how they've literally, like I said in the introduction, have changed all of these businesses, schools, and even youth sports programs now into churches, spreading the unholy gospel of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, and they do such a good job of making it seem like you said, all those words are good words in and of themselves.
Yeah.
How can you be against not including everybody? That of course you should include everybody. Everybody should have a chance, or everybody should have equal opportunity. Everybody should, but that's not what it's all about. It's more about accepting evil and rejecting what's good and true.
But think of how much work it would be for Satan to put up his own churches everywhere and hit everybody. He figured out a way to literally transform the business you work for into his church. I mean, that hit me this morning as I was studying this. It's like, oh my gosh, he doesn't need churches. He's got his apostles and his disciples now inserted into every school and every workplace in our nation. Imagine if Christians had that. I mean, if you had a Christian department, you literally could then transform, you could literally transform every aspect of the society. But Christians don't do that because we don't want to push ourselves on other people or force our beliefs. But they have no problem forcing their beliefs on other people. And when we spread the truth, we do it in a way where we're not lying and deceiving people. We're just open. We're just like, hey, this is the truth, accept it or not. Satan goes in and gets believers by lying to them, deceiving them. And so his tactics are, he'll do whatever it takes to meet the end goal, whereas it's, we believe in honesty and treating people with dignity and respect and let them choose rather than trick them. We're not trying to go around and trick people into being Christians because it wouldn't work anyways.
Right.
But he's, man, I'm just almost at awe of his ingenuity and his, he wasn't called the serpent in the Garden of Eden for nothing. It said, and the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, meaning He's more subtle than any of God's created order. He's that sneaky. And think about it, not only was he that smart back then, 6,000 years ago in the Garden of Eden, but he's had 6,000 years, he and his followers have had 6,000 years to critique and tweak their systems of deception. I mean, they study, there's all kinds of, like you go into Hollywood and other things that are controlled by the enemy in our culture now, and they've been studying psychology of the human mind and how to manipulate human behavior for a long time, and they're getting better and better at it as we go. And the Bible calls it in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 strong delusion. It's a delusion. I mean, these people, they're like, they believe in this. They're just under a delusion because it really is quite open what they're doing. Let's say somebody has a statement, a DEI statement. Someone says, well, it doesn't look bad to me. But at the same time, they know that includes transgenderism and could cause other issues like men going into boys' bathrooms or men going into women's bathrooms and exposing themselves to little girls. If all they got to do is say they're a girl and they can do that, they know that that's a part of this, but yet they're still under this delusion that it's something that's good. It's unbelievable. It's mind-boggling, but
he's definitely using the alphabet.
Yeah.
Without knowledge of what it actually means.
Right.
And the other sad truth is that, we think, well, at least we have other Christians and the churches, and there's a lot of I don't know overall the population of Christian churches is dying, but I know there's a lot of mega churches around the country and maybe the world. I mean, some of these churches have 100,000 people in attendance, or not, or just members. I don't know if they show up every Sunday, but so you would think, wow, the church is really strong and look at all these great things. But I think so many of the churches are falling into that whole DEI movement. So that's not only is that bad, but that's making it even worse and faster because now you think you're doing right. Now you think you're righteous because you're in a church and you're in a Christian church, quote unquote. And so now you're even more deceived than just somebody that doesn't even want to be a Christian. At least they're, I don't know. It's Satan is getting us in every way, shape, and form, and it can be discouraging at times. But
well, it almost sounds backwards, like you wouldn't expect it to be this way. But from my observations, it seems as though the church was the first thing that was taken over. So biblical churches were literally turned into churches promoting false gospels, doctrines from Satan, right? And then since that's been going on for so long, and that's why it's very hard to find a local church that actually teaches the true gospel, the true word of God, that now they've been because the church has been so broken down, there's been nobody to stand against the takeover of our businesses, our schools, and our youth sports organizations. There's just no knowledge or defense, that people there's just no knowledge of what's going on, and they can't defend it without knowledge. There's also what this DEI does, and I didn't bring it up in the study. Jesus gave a parable how they're really anti-masculine. There's a parable that Jesus gives concerning, a proverb, I guess you would call it, where he says the enemy will first bind the strong man of the house before he can spoil the entire house. And so I think that's what's happening right now is they're binding Christianity. They're trying to make Christianity non-effective. Because if you believe in DEI, there is no gospel, right? Because if sinners are considered to be holy and righteous already, or if you were born non-white, you're already righteous and holy no matter what. If you're already born that way, you don't need a savior. So the gospel now is bound, because I can't then go into anywhere in the society now and say, hey, you're a sinner in need of a savior. No, I'm not. I'm righteous. DEI tells me I'm amazing. Okay? And so now once that gospel is bound, everything can be wiped out. And that's what we're seeing right now. Everything is being wiped out and destroyed before our eyes.
Philip wants to know what you thought of the debates.
I watched the first half pretty closely, and then it kind of started seeming like the same thing over and over again. But in the very beginning, you could tell that there's that Joe Biden is just really losing his mind. And then when he was getting to a point like I was right there, I lost my train of thought.
Well, everybody does it.
I know, I'm teasing, but he does it like every time he says something, he's doing it.
Yeah.
And once the moderator would see that, oh crap, he's really stepping on himself. There was one time where she says, okay, thank you, President Trump, or whatever, Mr. Trump. And so they were covering for him all the time. And you could tell the questions, the order of everything was designed to try to give him a pass or an excuse. But then at the same time, you look at Trump going back and forth, it almost seems to be the same left-right paradigm going on, where it's just this guy's angry against this guy and this guy's angry against that guy. So, I mean, did either of them, I mean, Trump does give decent amount of, I don't want to call it lip service because I don't want to judge him, but it could be perceived as lip service for Christian values. But there was never anything concrete said about what the real problem in America is. I mean, the real problem is we've lost our faith, and therefore the nation is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be too hard for him to do that. He could just keep going back to that. That's the main talking point. If I was running for office, you could try to argue with me about this or that. I would just come back to that every single time, because that's the real issue. All the other issues are side issues. They're the result of our faith being almost non-existent anymore, and us just totally sucked into the world. So I don't know. My fear is, as we get into this, is that we just don't want to see Christians pulled away from what we're here to advance the kingdom of God,
Right.
not to just make our nation great for the sake of greatness. It becomes great because of Deuteronomy 28 if we keep the commandments of God.
Which Donald Trump, whether it is lip service or not, has actually said things in the past about we need to get back to God and
Right.
that whole thing. But I mean, I guess it's better that he's saying it than not saying it.
Well, honestly, and you got to give him credit. He has, though many of us are suspicious that he could just be giving lip service, he's given a lot more lip service than any other president in my
Right.
lifetime. Even probably more than Ronald Reagan. For sure, more than Bush.
Well, and he's only doing it for the love of the country, because I think he even said in this debate that he could be off, retired, living the good life, playing golf every day, just relaxing and enjoying the rest of his life, And instead, he's taking on the world and Satan and the enemies of God and all the darts they're throwing at him and the criminal charge. I mean, the life he's made for himself now is you would consider is horrible. He's basically fighting for his life because of his love for the country. Otherwise, he wouldn't be running for president.
Well, and you do got to give him credit for that. Like I mentioned before during like a lot of political seasons, that there were kings in the Bible in the Old Testament that God didn't say you were right all the time to all these kings. David was considered like the standard of a good king. But all other kings were like, hey, you did this much like David, but you got these other issues. You know, you might have had the altar of Baal you left unchecked. And so, yeah, I think we got to give him credit for that. But there's also, there's a potential third motivation or another option for his motivation to do what he's doing. And it could be love for country. But someone, if they were just seeking their own greatness, could be willing to suffer a lot of hardship along the way, especially if it's a game to them and it's just exciting and they love the thrill of battle and excitement and, arguing with, if they love that kind of tension and that's what keeps them alive.
Yeah. Except
that
that
could
83 or what, I don't know how old he is.
Yeah.
But, man, the guy's got some ambition.
But I mean, if you already, you could look at it this way, if you already have all the riches you need, getting more riches or relaxing is boring, but taking on another challenge could be exciting to them, whether it be for the right purposes or the wrong. So I want to be careful. We know that there are that there are actors that say they are with us and then we find out, no, they're not. I want to be very careful that we don't automatically assume everybody is that way. Because I know some people would say Trump for sure is the Antichrist or for sure he's tricking us. I don't know that for sure, and I'm not going to judge him. Will I watch? And if something happens where he turns around and deceives everybody, would I be prepared for that? Absolutely. But you do have to also give him credit for the fact that the Supreme Court justices that he put in, that's a very significant thing. If that was his only accomplishment, he literally helps put a barrier up to the left from totally taking away everything from us the last 8 years or whatever. I mean, it's
The last thing I'll say on it is the other thing I'm worried about is now that Joe is exposed, which I already knew and we all knew, and is exposed to all the people that don't pay attention how bad he is. I would have rather had him stay as the guy that's going to run against Trump. I think he's not going to be running against Trump, and I think they're going to find somebody that actually could beat Trump.
They say they don't have enough time because it's 6 weeks to the.
Well,
convention.
they'll make time. They'll figure something out. They don't follow the rules, so they'll figure something out.
Because they want the rest of us to just
Yeah.
not care.
And what they'll do is have him end his term, and then they'll have somebody else, whatever. And there's all kinds of people that could step in that all the uneducated, people that aren't paying attention would think, oh, Gavin Newsom, he's a slick dude, he's a good-looking guy, he's a good talker, he's from California, even though he's ruined California, but people don't care about that. They just think, oh, there's a guy we can get behind, or Michelle Obama, they'll get her in there, and she'll destroy Trump just because of who she is. And, so that's my only concern is that now that he's been exposed, some people think they did it on purpose.
well, yeah. You think about Michelle Obama; she's like a god for the DEI movement.
Oh, yeah, she checks all the boxes.
Doesn't get any better than that. And yeah,
Mike,
yeah,
big
especially
Mike.
if it's Michael. But who knows about that? But yeah, it's why they don't do that. I don't know. Many speculate that Obama's already running things with Biden in office anyway. So why be bound by all the extra duties when you can laser focus your agenda and have a puppet just handle all the other stuff that you don't want to waste your time doing? Anything else?
I heard somebody had said that the comparison of Trump to Jehu the king,
Oh yeah.
that they are very much in comparison. I haven't read all about him, but I guess he was a good king, and he did what he was supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
but he had underlying things in his.
Right. Yeah, he had other sins or other things he did imperfectly. And of course, you go back to Samson. Very I mean, there were some serious moral issues that were going on there with Samson, but God used him to totally frustrate the Philistines. He used his unholy marriage with the Philistine woman, to actually destroy the Philistines. And so, but you would never do that as a believer. You would never go marry a non-Christian woman or a non-Israelite just so you could get it. You wouldn't plan it, but God can plan that out. He used his unholy lust to actually save his people. It was amazing. Anything else? All right, we will end it right there. Hey, we want to thank everybody for joining us. Until next time, stay in his word every single day so that you can be a Christian overcomer. God bless.
Christian Overcomers is brought to you by the tithes and offerings of our listeners. If you would like to support our ministry, please go to ChristianOvercomers.com. God bless you, and thank you for your support.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible sword. His truth is marching on.